I looked at the news just now, and it was kind of interesting what I saw. Basically, what the news says is that Tuesday, it's going to drop to 45 degrees in Chicago, Fahrenheit. And I said, well, that's kind of strange. I mean, just like a few weeks ago, they were saying that, that global warming was a problem. This is going to be the hottest year on record. And I say, let me see. In the middle of July, 45 degrees low in Chicago. That's like a record low, not a record high. And then they're saying, oh no, there's a polar vortex. In the summer? I don't think there's a polar vortex in the summer. I think they lied to us about global warming, and I think global warming is a complete fraud, and I'll tell you why it's a complete fraud. Now, back in the 70s, the government was telling us that what we needed to do was carpooling. That carpooling was the answer. And people were saying, well, what do you mean carpooling? Think about it. Carpooling is the answer. And think about it. Why is carpooling the answer? Well, it's pretty simple. You have to pay a certain amount of money to get to work. You pay insurance, you pay, lots of things. What if you had your neighbor buy insurance for his car and buy gas for his car, and you would just pay for the gas? You would still have to pay for the car, and you would still have to pay for the insurance. You'd pay for the gas. The gas is a big component, especially now that it's like $4 a gallon. So, think about it. If you use 10 gallons a week, that'd be like $40 that you would give them every week. And you would save all the money on having a car, because you wouldn't have to buy insurance for the car or any of the other things that you have to buy for the car. Repairs, none of that. What if your neighbor got sick? Well, you could just rent a car. He's not going to be sick forever, Might be sick for a few days. You just rent a car those few days. But the thing is, here's the important part. The government was pushing carpooling back in the 70s. They're not pushing it now. Now what they're saying is, oh, you need a chauffeur's license, and you need to charge a certain amount of money for every mile that you travel. And you need to have, all these permits. You need to be like a licensed chauffeur before you can give someone, a ride in your car. And the insurance you have to pay is a lot higher. But what if you have an accident? You see, the government's coming up with all these rules and regulations. But back in the 70s, they were saying, oh no, all the neighbors need to help each other, and we need to do carpooling. And now suddenly, oh, carpooling? Oh no, you can't do that, because that's against the law. And what if I buy a big van and I just take a bunch of people to work? No. You need to have a license. You need to have a permit. Because here's what happens. If two people use the car, they use twice as much gas. The government gets money from the gas tax and also from the carbon tax. So you're going to take all that money away from the government. It used to be real easy to get a motorcycle license. I know because I have a motorcycle, and it would do 150 miles to the gallon. I don't ride it anymore. It's really hard now to get a motorcycle license. Why is that? Because motorcycles get a lot more miles to each gallon of gas. The government would get a lot less money if everybody had a motorcycle and they would ride a motorcycle to work. And you might say, well, what if it's like freezing below zero outside? Yeah, that day you might use the car. But most of the time, you'd probably use the motorcycle and you'd save lots of gas. The government doesn't want that. Because you see, they know that global warming is a complete and total fraud. That's why they don't want you to save gas. They don't care about saving gas. But they do care about not getting money from the carbon tax, and they do care about not getting money from the gas tax. So they want to make as many rules as they can to make it illegal for people to give their neighbors a ride, or to help their neighbors and give them a ride to the airport. I remember one person said, it used to be real common that a neighbor would give you a ride to the airport. And then when he needs to go somewhere, you would give him a ride to the airport. You don't have that anymore because that's illegal now. You see, they constantly add new layers of laws. They're constantly adding more laws and more laws and more laws and more regulations and more fines. You can't do that anymore. You have to call the taxi company. In fact, what I do which is pretty simple actually, is I call the rental car agency and I drop the rental car off at the airport. The rental car agency will drive to my house, and that's cheaper than a taxi, because a taxi would be like 200 bucks. But if I call the rental car agency, it's like 50 bucks. It's not that expensive. But you see, I can't give anyone a ride anymore because they've constantly added more rules and more regulations and more rules and more regulations because they don't want any carpooling, because they know that the carbon tax thing is going to go through, and what they want to do is they want to make it illegal for you to save gas. So ways that you can save gas, like for example, you could use a motorcycle. Now, somebody might say, well, what about a bicycle? Sure, if you live a mile away from work, most people don't live a mile away from their work. Most people are going to live 20 miles, 30 miles away from their work, or more. You can't use a bicycle when it's that far. In fact, the government has passed all kinds of rules against bicycles that are electrically powered, because they know that if you live 5, 10 miles away from work, you can't arrive at work all sweaty or they'll fire you. They know that. They're smart. They'll say, oh, you can use a bicycle if you want. They know that you'll get fired. But if you use an electric bicycle, the government has passed all kinds of rules and regulations against electric bicycles because they say that they're dangerous. Oh yeah, they're dangerous, all right. They're dangerous to the government's pocketbook. That's what they're dangerous to. They used to sell bicycles everywhere. The electric bicycles, they used to sell them at Pep Boys. They used to sell them at Sports Authority. It used to be all over the place. I don't find them anywhere now. You know, I went to Pep Boys, they don't have them anymore. Sports Authority, they don't have them anymore. They used to have them, you know, Menards, all kinds of places used to have them. They don't have them anymore. And they'll say, oh, they weren't selling. They weren't selling. I remember when they had them, they were selling like hotcakes. They weren't selling. They were selling like hotcakes. The reason is the government clamped down on them and said, we don't want those electric bicycles on the road because those people don't use gasoline, and then we don't get money from the carbon tax. You see, there is no global warming, and they know it. If there was global warming, they would be pushing the electric bicycles, they would be pushing motorcycles, because a motorcycle uses a lot less gasoline than a car. But they don't want any of those things because all they want is your money. That's what they want, your money. They don't give a damn about the environment. They never have and they never will. You know, all the fish could die in the ocean. They'd just be laughing. The only thing they want is to pass a carbon tax so that it puts more money in their pocket. And that's all they care about. And the only thing that's important to them is to get the idiots, and that's what they call you, to pay more money in taxes. And then they'll say, oh, this is to save the environment. We got to save the environment, so we need a carbon tax. We need to ban coal. You know, coal is what produces most of our electricity. What, people are idiots or something? You know, try living without electricity, you'll see how wonderful life is. You know, it's like a trip back to memory lane. Yeah, back to the 1700s. You know, maybe we should get a horse while we're at it. They might pass a horse tax, you know, make that illegal. But here's something to give you an idea of how the government operates. The government said that they wanted to make electric cars have to pay a fine since they don't pay any gas tax. They would have to pay like a $2,000 fine every year to have an electric car. I mean, already less than 1% of the cars sold are electric cars. I mean, you'd have like 1 or 2 cars sold per year if you made people pay $2,000 a year for, no, because those people are getting a free ride. They're not paying any gas tax. Well, of course they're not paying any gas tax. They're not paying any gas tax, so they're not using any gas. They say, oh, well, what we need is to hit them with a fine because they're stealing from us, because they're not paying the gas tax. Yeah, Google it. You'll find out that the government wants to hit you with a fine if you have an electric car. That's their latest brainchild. Now, why would they do that if the whole idea is to reduce the amount of CO2 in the air? Now, the government says, oh, well, most of our electricity comes from coal, so it doesn't really matter. Well, they could build a bunch of windmills and have most of the electricity come from the wind, and then that would actually help reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the air. No, what they want is a gas tax and a carbon tax and a million other taxes to take your money and put it in their pocket. And they don't give a damn about the environment, because how many times have you seen the government say, oh, people need to go out and plant trees. Now that would reduce the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. They don't want that. They just want a gas tax and a carbon tax. That's what they want. If you plant a bunch of trees, that doesn't really solve their problem. Their problem is how to get your money. That's their problem. That's what they want. And the only thing they care about is talking about global warming and the gas tax and all those things to get more of your money into their pocket. Because that's what they want, your money. They don't give a damn about the environment. You don't see them planting trees, you don't see them doing anything. Now, somebody might say, well, when has the government ever planted trees? Well, back in the 1930s, the government was planting trees with the Civil Conservation Corps. They planted lots of trees back then. And they said that that was good because it was good for the environment. They could be doing it now. After all, they're constantly talking about CO2 increasing. Well, if they want to reduce CO2, they can plant a bunch of trees. That would certainly reduce the amount of CO2. They don't care. All they want is a gas tax and a carbon tax and a million other taxes to take your money out of your pocket and stick it in their pocket. And that's why they constantly make up more excuses. Now, what I started out with was I was telling you there is no global warming, there never was, and you can take a look at what the temperatures are. All you need is a thermometer. And you see, now they're saying, oh, there's a polar vortex. Oh no, there's no polar vortex. You see, there were a record number of below zero days this year. Now, here we are in summer, and there's a record number of days that are colder than normal. Now, the government said that the number of 90-degree days would go up because due to global warming, it would get really hot, and people would have super high air conditioning bills. Well, listen, my air conditioner's right behind me. It's not turned on, and it doesn't have to be turned on. You know why? Because it's like 70-something outside. There is no global warming. There never was any global warming. Well, I don't have to turn the air conditioner on when it's 70 degrees. I have to turn it on when it's 90. That's the thing. Global warming is a complete fraud. I've told you as much. Now, if global warming was not a fraud, you would see the government pushing people using bicycles. You'd see the government pushing people using motorcycles. You'd see the government pushing people using all kinds of devices to save energy. For example, carpooling. Now that's one thing that they used to do a lot in the 70s when they had the energy crisis. Remember when there were these huge lines to get like 5 gallons of gas, and there were the even and odd days? You know, if your license number ended in an odd number, you would go on the odd days, and if your license number ended in an even number, you would go on even number days. Remember that? Because there were huge lines to get gas at the gas station. Oh yeah, and they had limits, like some had 5 gallons, others had 10 gallons as their limit. And the government said, oh, what can we do to solve this problem? Oh, carpooling. Oh yeah, we can do that. We can do this. They came up with all kinds of ideas. Well, why don't they use those ideas now? Oh, no. We're going to pass lots of regulations. We're going to make it really hard for you to do any kind of carpooling. First off, you have to have your vehicle registered, as a commercial vehicle, and it has to pass all these inspections, and then you have to have a chauffeur license, and you have to have a special permit for the city that you're operating in, like if you're a taxi driver or something, and you're just a person that has a job, and they're making you jump through a million hoops just so that you can take your neighbor to work, because he so happens he works at the same company as you, and you're thinking, well, I can save some money. We'll just split the cost of gas. No, not anymore. They got a million regulations. And they're going to add more regulations because what they like is to hit you with fines. Oh, here's a special fine for you because you didn't do what you were supposed to. I mean, do you think that's going to be how it's going to run? That's how it is because there is no global warming. And they know that. They know that global warming is a complete fraud. And when you know global warming is a complete fraud, all you talk about is a carbon tax because you need more taxes and you need more money. And you don't care about global warming because you know it's not true. It's like they're not worried about Miami being underwater. How many times have you seen the government say, we're going to have to relocate all those people in Miami to higher ground because that city will soon be flooded? How many times have you heard the government say that? I'll tell you how many. 0. They know Miami's not going to be flooded. They know Boston is not going to be flooded. They know New York City's not going to be flooded. They know that it's complete garbage, and they know that global warming is a complete fraud.